production mode is on, but my cluttered AutoCAD workspace is distracting. So let's create an effortless switch to a clean and efficient workspace. We don't want to start from scratch, so there is already a command or tool in AutoCAD called LazyCleanScreen. So this command, if we use it, of course, will help us kind of clean the screen. And then the command to turn this off is clean screen off, right? So that way we can have our palettes to also work. And there is a keyboard shortcut for this also, right? It's the Control-0 on your keyboard, so that will toggle between screen on and screen off. But if you can see with more details, this doesn't give us the flexibility that we need, because everybody have a different workflow. For instance, in my case, I always like to have my tool palette even on a clean screen mode, right? Because I have some tools, commands, and that I can quickly use while in production mode, right? So that this command doesn't give me that flexibility. Also, I would like to hide some of these items on my screen that I don't need in production mode, as well as the status bar that is a little distracting when I'm in full speed. So that's why we need to create this custom command. So let me turn off the clean screen mode with Control-0. Again, that's the shortcut. All right, so over here, what we're gonna do, again, to not start from 0, I'm gonna open the CUI, right, with the shortcut. And over here, let me find the clean screen command. So it's right here. And if we go to the macro option over here and click the 3 dots, we can copy this code, right? And we can cancel, of course, this, and then we can kind of add on top of this macro code. So what I'm gonna do is simply grab anything from my drawing in this case and add it to my tool palette, right? If you don't have your tool palette, you can simply open it with the shortcut Control-3 on your keyboard. So here I'm gonna grab this polygon and simply left click on it and drag it like so. So over here I can pick properties once I do a right click, and we can start customizing our command. In this case, I'm gonna call it LazyCleanScreen, right? You can name it as you wish. So one of the problems that we will have here is that we cannot add our macro code over here. It's kind of locked. So what we need to do is change the flyout from yes to no, and then we will be able to customize our command screen, right? So over here, I'll simply erase this part and leave my CC, because that's a way to stop or cancel any active command before we run our LazyCleanScreen. And I'll simply paste what I just copied, right, from the clean screen. As you can see, let's quickly go over this clean screen command to kind of understand what AutoCAD is doing, so we can customize this, right, and kind of make it more flexible and more useful. So it's basically a true and false statement, right? If clean screen is 1, do this, and if it's not, then do the other thing. So very simple and straightforward there, but what we need to do is the following. We were talking about the status bar, that it's a little distracting too on production mode when we are on full speed, right? So how can we hide the status bar also? So there is a system variable called status bar. So let's use that, and we need to, of course, add this status bar after our clean screen off. So over here, I'm gonna simply add an enter or a semicolon that represents an enter on your command line, and I'm gonna add status bar and press enter with a semicolon, and of course I want the status bar to be 1 and press enter again. So that will help us to show and hide the over here the status bar, but we also need the status bar on the other side over here when this is true, right? So what I'm gonna do is locate myself over here and add a semicolon that represents an enter, and also say status bar, of course enter always, and 0 and enter. So all we did now is add the status bar option of on and off to this clean screen command, right? What about the command line also? So the command line, do you need it for a production mode? I would say no, because again it's a little distracting. So let's also customize or add the command line option over here. So there is two commands for this. It's called the command line, so let's add that on our code. So I'm gonna add it over here after the status bar. So I'm gonna say command line and press enter, of course. And a way to hide the command line, this would be to show the command line, right? But we need to hide it also. So let's go on the other side and say command line hide and press enter, of course. So that way, again, we're simply adding a true and false statement when we use this command to also hide and show the command line. What about our palettes, right? Sometimes happen that we open and close certain palettes. For instance, our property palette, we can have it sometimes closed, sometimes open, and then I want this command to show it either when the palette is active or not. So in order to do that, I'm gonna add the following to the code. So after the status bar 1, I'm gonna add external references. So this is a command to external references and press enter, of course. This is a command to simply open my X-ray palettes, because when I'm not on production mode, I like to have this palette open because I usually work heavily with X-rays, right? And the next thing that I like to customize is the layer palette, right? When I'm not in full speed, I use my layer palette. So I'm gonna add that also on my code. So layer palette, like so. And another thing that I like to use is the property palette, right? When I'm not on full speed. So I'm gonna use the shortcut PR for the property palette. And at the end of the diesel expression, we don't need an enter over here, so I'm gonna erase this enter, as well as this one over here from the command line also. So make sure you do that, because when we want to separate our statement from true or false, we do it by using a regular comma. Okay, so that's the comma over here, and we're good over here. So before I forget, I was mentioning the tool palette, right? I always like to have my tool palette either on production mode or on a regular mode. So I'm gonna add my tool palette by the end of my code by simply using the TP shortcut. That's the shortcut to open the tool palette, like so. All right, so let's test this command. And let's see some of the things that we need to update in order for this tool to be perfect. So let's click OK and let's quickly test it. All right, so let's go over here and let's test our LazyCleanScreen. So we click on it. Okay, now there are still some items that are showing up, like for instance this view cube, this 3D view cube. So it's right here, as well as this other item. So let's turn off our LazyCleanScreen, clean screen. So by clicking on it, and we can see that our tools are showing up now, or palettes, but there is a problem with our command line. So look what's gonna happen when I keep using my LazyClean and turning it on and off. You can see that the command line starts showing bigger and bigger as I click on it. Do you see that? So I'm gonna try it one more time, and let's do it one more time. So you can see our command line, for a weird reason, right? That's something AutoCAD related, start getting bigger and bigger. And let's see how we can solve that. A way that I found to fix this is by doing the following. So simply let's first kind of rearrange our command line like this and make it the size that we need, right? So I like to have my command line like this size. So, and then what we need to do is move it, but move it to towards our status bar. But you can see that it kind of glue to our status bar. We don't want that because that's where the glitch happens. So what we can do is, using our control or holding control key, we can move it very, very, very slow, and that way we can place it in a way that is not touching our status bar. So that's the trick that I found to avoid this glitch. We can see that there are some items on our workspace or drawing space also that are still showing up. So what I'm gonna use is simply use a system variable called a nav bar display. It's right here. So nav bar display, and this is a system variable, and if we turn this off using the 0 option, you can see that it will go away. Now again, do we need to add this system variable to our LazyCleanScreen command? And the answer is no, because if we turn this off only once, then it will work for any other drawing. So let me open another drawing right here really quick, and you can see that again that's off, the navigation bar. So then the answer is we don't need to add this navigation bar to our code. So similarly, display view cube in 2D and in 3D. So in my case, I most of the time work on 2D, so I'm gonna use the display view cube in 2D. So once we do that, right now you can see is turned on. So let's turn it off using the 0 option, and that way we can see that our view cube goes away. And if we go to all of our drawings, we can see that indeed that system variable will help us to do that, to hide our view cube. So that's awesome. We don't need to add it to our lazy tool because again we found a way to have it always off. So all right, so let's see what else do we need, right? So for instance, let's see, I'm working on a production mode over here. So I go and turn my production mode on, and I'm working on full speed over here, right? Working here and there. And I want to change to my other drawing to copy some items. So if I do or cycle between my drawings with the control tab on my keyboard, you can see that I will have to go over the start interface, which I don't want because that's very distracting in production mode, right? So let's do that. Start mode, and let's decide whether we need to include this system variable in our command or not, right? So the way we're gonna decide is, again, if we turn this off with the 0 option, you can see that now when I cycle between my drawings with control tab, I won't see that start interface again. What happens when we are in production mode and we want to change layers, right? What we can do is, when we are in production mode, we could utilize our tool palette, I mean our quick property palette. I can use the QP mode system variable, and I can set that to 1, and that will show up my quick property palette. So you can see now that my quick property palette is on and I could quickly change. So a way to turn this on also, it's by using the keyboard shortcut Control Shift and P, and that way you'll have your property palette off, and if you do it again, Control Shift P, your quick property palette will be on. So this quick property palette, you can move it as you wish. I like to have it over here when I'm in production mode. So again, I can now select my item and say select similar, and that way I can quickly change the layer to the layer that I need. For instance, I want this layer to be on a elevation white, and the color I want it to be by layer. So what if I'm in production mode and I want to change the color of my layer? For that, we can go on the quick access panel over here, and if we expand this by clicking on this triangle, we will see that we have an option called layers, right? So let's click that, and immediately we will have this layer tool over here, and that way we can quickly change, for instance, colors. If I select this item, I can expand and simply turn it off, turn it on, lock it, or change the color by clicking on this icon. So I can quickly change it to a color that I need, like so, right? So that's another obstacle that we solved it by utilizing some of these tools that AutoCAD provide us, so we don't have to be switching a lot between production mode or not. So will this be helpful to you or beneficial? Let me know on the chat.